This is a UFO that was observed for 22 minutes near the International Space Station. I think it was in 2020 or before. The object.
Number 10. Contractor. A former NASA contractor went on video to reveal the fact that NASA has been keeping secrets from us. She says she both viewed and heard evidence that 3 NASA astronauts said that they had seen unidentified flying objects land on the moon, but that these events were later covered up in an operation that was codenamed Santa Claus, a fitting name as NASA wants you to believe that UFOs are just about as real as Santa. She says that she had clearance to enter Building 8 at NASA's Johnson Space Center back in the 1970s. She says that she received information over lunch from officials that if anyone was ever caught exposing aliens as real, they would lose their pensions, and apparently one person in the past had not only lost their pension, but had disappeared off the face of the earth. In the video, she said, "They didn't threaten to kill me, but I got the message I shouldn't talk about it." She apparently witnessed everything from employees being forced to burn photographic evidence and seeing official pictures being airbrushed to hide UFOs. Number 9. The Kecksburg File. On the night of December 9th, 1965, a giant fireball which caused a sonic boom streaked across the sky before crashing into the woods in Kecksburg, Pennsylvania. Military immediately arrived and sealed off the area, hauling off a massive object the size of a bus to their Air Force base nearby in Ohio. The Pentagon immediately tried to cover it up, saying it was a meteorite, releasing no details about the incident. But in 2003, NASA went on to say that it was not a satellite, but 2 years later in 2005, they said, yeah, actually it was a satellite, just don't worry about it. The cover-up seemed never ending, and it just led more and more people to become interested in finding out the truth of the Kecksburg File. A Freedom of Information Act was then started to get the file looked into again, and the judge threw away NASA's attempts to have the lawsuit thrown out. So in 2007, they announced they would be reopening the Kecksburg File, but they claimed that a majority of the files had been destroyed or lost, and they never released what it actually was that crashed that day. Number 8. Astronaut. Like I said in the first point, there is allegedly a conspiracy within NASA to cover up any of their employees or former employees talking about the fact that they have had alien experiences. But as I have mentioned in other parts of this list, there are actually a handful of astronauts who have spoken out about potentially alien encounters. Leland Melvin is probably best known for taking his astronaut photos with his rescued dogs, but what you're probably not familiar with is the fact that he has shared his alien experiences on Twitter. He received a question on Twitter that read, "What's your outlook about the existence of intelligent alien life living in our solar system? Have you ever witnessed a UFO?" And Leland went on to respond with, "I have not seen one in space or on the ground, but thought I saw something organic/alien-like floating out of the payload bay. Randy Bresnick and I called the ground to ask what it could be, and they said it was ice that had broken off of the Freon hoses. Translucent, curved, organic looking, with an alien emoji at the end." Of course, he explains it by saying it was just ice, but that was probably just NASA feeding them an easy cover-up. Number 7. Moon crash. The Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter is similar to the Mars Orbiter that I have talked about before. It basically watches over the moon and takes pictures of its surface. Earlier this year, they released a photo that had many people scratching their heads and insisting that NASA was doing yet another cover-up. The photo shows the surface of the moon with what is called a double impact crater. While the moon is covered in tons of craters, this one is unique for this reason. The evidence of the dozens of feet wide indentation seems to show that some sort of man-made spaceship crashed into the moon and left the divot. Many people on social media believe this to be evidence that some sort of alien craft had hit the moon, but NASA tried to shut everyone up by claiming it was just an out-of-control rocket. While they seem to know it was a rocket, they admitted that they don't have any idea where it came from or what its original path was intended to be. So even if it's not aliens, it's still pretty confusing. Number 6. Alien photo. Mars is one of the main planets that many people believe could be host to aliens, hence the term Martians and all the fictitious media that includes alien creatures visiting from Mars. On February 4th of this year, one person online dug up a photo video that the Perseverance rover had taken on Mars back in 2021. The title of the blog post being "Alien Figure Watching Mars Rover, 100% Proof of Life UFO Sighting News." The image seems to show a dark figure laying on a large Martian rock. It's distinctly human-shaped and darkly colored and stands out from anything else in the area or what we've seen in previous pictures. The man explains in his blog post everything that he believes it to be. There is a person laying down watching the NASA Mars rover from a safe distance away. The person is about 1 foot tall, 0.3 meters, and is lying down. Pinkish upper chest, neck and face, reddish hair, wearing a dark suit, but has a gray object over one shoulder. Looks like a backpack of some sort. There are even footprints behind the person leading up to the location they chose to lay down at. If you don't agree with that, then what do you think it could be? Number 10. NASA hacked. So first off, how do things like this from NASA even manage to get leaked? Well, apparently by British guys like Gary McKinnon hacking into their system. Between the years 2001 and 2002, Gary broke into 97 different government computers, believing NASA was hiding signs of alien life because of thousands of pictures of UFOs he found hidden away. A former NASA employee had said that satellite images were checked for UFOs and deleted if they showed any evidence, and Gary decided he wanted to break into NASA in order to validate these claims. He says that he found 4 different folders titled Filtered, Unfiltered, Processed, and Raw. He says that his slow internet connection only made him able to download 1 image before he lost access to the rest of them, the picture apparently being a clear image of a cigar-shaped spacecraft. Gary believes that NASA is hiding a wealth of UFO evidence from the public. Number 9. Edgar Mitchell. Astronaut Edgar Mitchell landed on the moon with the Apollo 14 mission, and he also believed that aliens helped prevent a conflict between the United States and Russia. He claimed that top military officials were hiding evidence of unidentified flying objects, and the fact that they were apparently often spotted hovering over White Sands testing range in New Mexico. In 2015, he said, "White Sands was a testing ground for atomic weapons, and that's what the extraterrestrials were interested in. They wanted to know about our military capabilities. My own experience talking to people has made it clear the ETs had been attempting to keep us from going to war and help create peace on Earth." He stated that the military had given him loads of information on aliens and their interactions with Earth, and after he left NASA, he dedicated his life and studies to looking into extraterrestrial existence. Number 8. Mars photos. A man named Richard Hoagland believes that NASA knows a lot more about Mars than they're letting on. He believes that astronauts have been to Mars and that there's a plethora of evidence of alien life on Mars that NASA is insistent on covering up. During the Viking 1 orbit in 1976, NASA released various photographs of the surface of Mars, and some of them seemed to show various different structures and one that apparently even looked like the Sphinx. This led people to believe that these structures had been built by aliens who lived on the Red Planet. Years later, in 1998, NASA took more pictures to debunk the theory, showing only rocks, but Richard and others believe that this is them trying to hide the truth and shrinking the structures that were previously on the planet. He also pulled up a NASA commissioned report from 1960 that recommended any future discoveries of alien life be hidden from the public so as not to disrupt the evolutionary flow of the century. Number 7. Sun object. Last video I talked about NASA cutting off their ISS feed when people believed that they saw a UFO falling towards the Earth. This one is a similar scenario, except it came from footage of the sun. In May of 2012, a YouTube user posted a video of a mysterious object seen flying near the sun in NASA's broadcast. The video zooming in on the pyramid-shaped object that many believe to be some sort of alien craft flying near the sun. A day later, NASA shut down the video feed. In a second video, the user said, "This is a cover-up to prevent us from seeing these things again. NASA must have seen this video and started making plans to change the way you and I are allowed to view it. NASA are clearly trying to stop us looking at the sun." Alien deniers may say that this is just some sort of camera glitch or sun flare, but I think we all know the truth. People telling you not to look at the sun is actually actually just propaganda so we don't see the aliens. And I'm just gonna say quickly for legal reasons that I do not actually condone staring into the sun. Number 6, the cube. This also isn't the only case of NASA cutting off the sun live stream after suspicious activity. It happened just this year in May as well. On May 2nd at around 1 in the afternoon, a large black cube appeared to come out of the sun, visible for about 2 seconds. A glitch then appeared on the live stream covering a large part of it, and after it clears, the cube is gone. An expert posted this to YouTube going over the footage and claims that this is evidence of some sort of alien spaceship coming out of the sun. Perhaps they have a secret alien base in there. Also, I say expert because he is a self-proclaimed extraterrestrial expert, and honestly, I'm gonna start calling myself that as well. You guys are watching a video from an expert now, people. Most people in the comments claim that this was just some sort of square-shaped solar flare, while another even claimed it was the manifestation of an angel gaining power from the sun. Number 10, UAP report. Alien fans and skeptics alike were pretty shocked when just a few months ago the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, or NASA, said that they believed in aliens. Well, actually, they said they were going to be investigating unidentified flying objects, but close enough. While some people did believe that this was NASA saying, hey, we believe in aliens, it was actually them announcing they were going to launch a study into UAPs, or unidentified aerial phenomenon, because I guess they're just too good to say UFO. The scientist coordinating the study said, over the decades, NASA has answered the call to tackle some of the most perplexing mysteries we know of, and this is no different. In the report, they said that a good chunk of confirmed unidentified objects seem to show evidence that they were made using advanced technology that humans just don't have yet. Number 9, injuries. A Freedom of Information Act request caused 1,500 pages of UFO reports and evidence to be declassified and leaked to the public. And what the pages contained was pretty shocking for those who read it. A percentage of the pages included information of how people who reported seeing UFOs and aliens had been legitimately physically affected, real physical evidence that something unexplained had happened to them. Some of the reports included things like burns, which could have been caused by the jets of a UFO, or potential face-to-face alien interference. Bafflingly, they also confirmed that women who had come into contact with aliens shortly fell mysteriously pregnant after the event, with no explanation as to why they were suddenly with child. Yes, we all know by now how mommy and daddy make babies, but that apparently wasn't a factor in these cases. Alien babies potentially on the way. Number 8, FLIR. Alongside these 1,500 documents, 3 separate videos were released that appeared to show UFOs being spotted by the United States military, so let's take a look. The first is titled FLIR and was originally filmed back in 2004 when the USS Nimitz was flying off the coast of Southern California. There had apparently already been an unidentified aircraft in the area for up to a week before the video was filmed. Off the coast, they spotted a large oval-shaped object, estimating it to be about 40 feet long and white in color. 4 people on the craft saw the object for a running total of about 5 minutes, although the video is only just over a minute. They were able to track it using their advanced infrared camera, and due to the object's shape, they nicknamed it the Tic Tac. All these videos to this day have no real explanation for what the UFOs actually were. Number 7, gimbal. Next up on the list we have the video titled Gimbal, which was leaked alongside the last one I just talked about. This one's different because we can hear the people in the jet reacting to what they're seeing. They use a similar infrared camera and follow the object that was flying over the East Coast. At first, they comment that it might be some kind of drone, but then note that it is fighting against incredibly strong winds and appearing to not be affected by it at all. They even comment that there are other unidentified crafts in the area, but we don't actually see them as it's locked onto the target. What's interesting about this one, as the people in the video point out, is that it moves in an incredibly strange fashion, appearing to rotate and move around despite the heavy winds it's apparently fighting against. My favorite part of this is that there's one guy calmly stating facts about it while the other cusses and yells in excitement. Is that a f***ing drone, dude? Number 6, go fast. The third and final leaked video is probably the best of the bunch, as the video starts before they have managed to lock onto the target and you can see it moving. The video is pretty correctly titled "Go Fast" because this thing is moving incredibly fast, like definitely faster than anything else that could have been an easy explanation. It's zipping over the top of the water as they try to get their camera to lock onto it, and when they finally do, they start cheering because of just how difficult it was due to how fast the object was moving. Their comments are a mix of excitement and confusion in regards to what they've managed to find, saying "look at that thing fly," while also going "what the f is that thing?" People often like to write off UFOs as some sort of secret military practice vessels or training project, so what can it be when the military itself doesn't know what they saw?
At the time of this recording, NASA has just launched a craft the other day set to head to Jupiter's moon to discover if life exists there. On October 14th, NASA launched the Europa Clipper spacecraft on a mission to explore Jupiter's moon, Europa, which scientists believe might have conditions suitable for life. The spacecraft lifted off from Kennedy Space Center in Florida on a SpaceX Falcon Heavy rocket. This mission aims to investigate Europa's subsurface ocean, hidden beneath an ice shell that could be up to 25 kilometers thick. Europa is about a quarter of the size of Earth, but it's believed to contain twice as much water as all of Earth's oceans combined. This makes it one of the most promising locations for finding potential life out in space, at least that we know of. The Europa Clipper is the largest spacecraft ever built for a planetary mission. It's about 100 feet long, equipped with 9 scientific instruments designed to measure the internal ocean and analyze the composition of the moon's surface. The spacecraft will conduct 49 close flybys of Europa starting in 2031, getting as close as 15.5 miles to the surface. So unfortunately, we do have quite a while to wait before we hear anything, but the fact that NASA is actively seeking out life on a distant moon is pretty cool. Fingers crossed they find something. Just last year, NASA released a highly anticipated 36-page report on UFOs or UAPs, and there were some interesting takeaways. They looked into hundreds of sightings but concluded that they didn't find any solid evidence that aliens were behind any of them. Still, they didn't completely rule out the possibility either. NASA Administrator Bill Nelson made it clear that the agency is stepping up its game in researching these mysterious encounters. He said they'll be using better tech and artificial intelligence to dig deeper into them. The report is pretty technical, but one key takeaway is that it stated there is no reason to conclude extraterrestrial sources are responsible for these sightings. But the report also didn't deny the possibility of, quote, potential unknown alien technology operating in Earth's atmosphere. So that's pretty cool. Nicola Fox, who's part of NASA's Science Mission Directorate, said UAPs are still one of our planet's biggest mysteries. The challenge? A lot of the data they have just isn't good enough to draw any solid conclusions about what these sightings really are. To tackle this, NASA brought in a new director of UAP research, but they're keeping their identity a secret. This person will build a database to track and analyze future sightings, and using AI and machine learning. It's a smart move, especially since Dr. Daniel Evans mentioned that some members of the UAP panel had faced, quote, actual threats, which is unsettling. So keeping the new director's identity hidden is really about protecting their safety. The Falcon Lake incident began on May 20th, 1967 in Falcon Lake, Manitoba, Canada. This event has often been called Canada's best documented UFO case, and for good reason. It all started with Stephen McCallick, an industrial mechanic and amateur geologist. He was exploring the area in search of precious metals when he suddenly heard a commotion from a flock of geese, and he looked up to see 2 strange objects hovering about 150 feet away, which he described as cigarette-shaped things with humps in the middle, glowing with a reddish hue. One of the crafts then landed on a nearby rocky platform, transforming into a shiny disc that looked like, quote, hot stainless steel. McCallick sketched the craft for about a half an hour before deciding that he wanted to get a closer look. As he approached, he noticed it was completely smooth, that the craft had an open door where he could hear muffled voices. Then he reached out and touched the craft, which was so hot it melted the fingertips of his gloves. As he turned to leave, understandably, a panel then opened up, releasing a blast of heated gas that knocked him back, setting his clothes on fire. McCulloch barely managed to escape, feeling nauseous and disoriented. He was so sick he was unable to eat solid food in the days following the incident and was treated for burns that doctors said resembled radiation injuries. His story caught the attention of the RCMP, the Royal Canadian Air Force, and even US authorities. And when they reached the site that McCulloch said he spotted the craft, authorities found a 15-foot ring of burnt vegetation, and there were highly radioactive elements found in soil samples and in the clothing McCulloch had been wearing on the day of the encounter, which he had to rip off as they were on fire. And there was also superheated metal that had melted into the cracks of rocks, also highly radioactive. Till this day, the case has not been explained. This incident is referred to as South Africa's Roswell, the Kalahari crash. Kind of tells you how significant this one was. So the story goes that this whole incident was covered up. Some of the details of this one are a bit vague, and some chalk this up to being a hoax, but there were supposed leaked documents describing the following events. So this was an unusual event that took place over the Indian Ocean on May 7th, 1989. According to reports, a fast-moving object, believed to be a UFO, was spotted by naval personnel. In response, fighter jets were sent to intercept and target it. The UFO was successfully hit and crashed in the Kalahari Desert, leaving a noticeable skid mark. Shortly after the crash, a US recovery team was swiftly deployed to gather evidence from the site and transport it to Patterson Air Force Base. And not only were parts of the aircraft retrieved, but the bodies of 2 alien beings as well. The Tic Tac UFO incident is one of the most compelling pieces of evidence in the world of unidentified aerial phenomena, or UAPs. On November 14th of 2004, retired Navy Commander David Fravor, a pilot with the USS Nimitz, had an encounter during a training exercise off the coast of Southern California. Fravor was flying with Lieutenant Commander Alex Dietrich when they were directed to investigate an unusual radar signal detected by the USS Princeton, another ship in their strike group. The radar operators had spotted, quote, multiple anomalous aerial vehicles that descended from 80,000 feet to sea level in less than a second. Fravor and Dietrich diverted to get a closer look, and as they approached, Fravor described seeing a small white object that looked almost like a Tic Tac, hovering above the ocean waves. He recalled in a 2021 interview that the object seemed to respond to their movements, as if it was aware that they were there. The Tic Tac was about the size of Fravor's jet, but had no visible markings, no wings or exhaust plumes. He attempted to cut it off, but the object accelerated away so quickly that it vanished from sight, only to be detected 60 miles away in less than a minute. Fravor stated, "I think what we experienced was well beyond the material science and the capabilities that we had at the time, that we have currently, or that we're going to have in the next 10 to 20 years. This incident came out in a report revealing over 500 sightings since 2004, some of which, including this one, are still unexplained.
In our number 10 spot we have, it's a death trap. An unsettling reason for not returning to the moon would be because it's supposedly a bit of a death trap. Apparently the moon's surface is littered with craters and boulders that threaten safe landings. Well, yep, that checks out as one of the biggest reasons. Why would we risk all that hard work and money if once we're finally there, the craters on the moon are the reason for the project to fail? We should definitely maybe send some moon rovers there to help us figure out that equation first. Apparently before the first landing, the US government spent billions to develop and launch and deliver satellites to map the surface of the moon, but they still can't predict meteorite impacts that might happen after. So anyways, it's a mission just to plan the landing, and even still, they'll never 100% know that everything will be fine. I can see why they may be hesitant. In our number 9 spot, we have the ending of the Cold War. One of the reasons it is said that we never returned to the moon was because the Cold War ended. Initially, getting to the moon, well, it was a race against Russia. NASA, as we know, won and got to the moon first, but in any case, they still wanted to go back to get a ton of research before Russia. But once the Cold War ended, the tension and competition wasn't as high. Yeah, that makes sense. That to me isn't really a good enough reason to not have gone back to the moon in, the last 50 years. But I could definitely see it being a motivating factor for not needing to go back as quickly. In our number 8 spot, we have theoretical benefits. Allegedly, the benefits of going back to the moon are largely theoretical. Of course, scientists believe that potential research would be a key reason to go back, but it doesn't seem to be a good enough reason. Apparently, this isn't a practical reason, and the risks would be too high for such an adventure to occur. If the moon were to eventually be used as a refueling place for larger expeditions, then that's a different story. But as it is, there isn't a good enough reason to return, and the government doesn't want to throw away billions on the possibility of benefits. Makes sense. In our number 7 spot, we have low funds. This one is probs one of the biggest and most likely reasons. Funds. Not that NASA doesn't already have a ton of funds for research purposes, but imagine how much more they would need to get to the moon again. They would have to build a whole new rocket, which I don't know how many employees that will take, plus you have to pay the astronauts a ton, plus all the mathematical scientists that plan the trip and whatever they do. I don't work at NASA, okay, so I have no idea how many employees this expedition would require, but my point is that a lot of time will be needed and therefore a lot of moolah. Probably one of the biggest reasons why the presidents aren't backing another landing because of how much money from people's taxes it will require. But it is curious why only approximately 0.4% of the US federal budget gets given to NASA these days, when back in the 60s, NASA was receiving around 4%. So anyways, this low budget reasoning makes sense, especially if NASA can't show a clear profit margin from doing the trip. The government is not going to want to contribute to this. In our number 6 spot, we have aliens reside on the moon. This is a fun theory, and one that China almost thought to be true with their U-2 moon rover discovered a mystery hut on the moon earlier this year. It turned out to be a rock on a crater rim, which truly made me laugh out loud. But still guys, who knows, it might be possible. Why not? We can't be the only living creatures in the universe. Also, anyone remember Neil Armstrong apparently commented on seeing big, enormous creatures on the moon? Even though he denies it, NASA employees confirmed that they heard him talk about them, so it's very possible that we aren't returning to the moon because of the enormous moon aliens. Who knows?
Well, we gotta start off with what everyone kinda hopes to be the case. Aliens. Either aliens that pose a threat to our safety that we want to stay away from, or aliens that the government wants to cover up. One theory is that during Apollo missions, astronauts encountered extraterrestrial beings or evidence of their existence on the moon. And if that is true, it's pretty awesome for one, but would also have some pretty serious implications for humanity. Implications that NASA and the government may have figured we just weren't ready for yet. Some believe that governments and space agencies have deliberately kept this information from the public to avoid widespread panic. They may have also found advanced technology on the moon they didn't want falling into the wrong hands. There have been testimonies from former astronauts hinting at unexplained encounters, and that's not even mentioning all the supposed whistleblower accounts about secretive government operations with extraterrestrials here on Earth. So the fear of exposing such a big secret may be one reason why astronauts haven't returned to the moon in such a long time. If we really do end up returning in 2026 though, maybe some secrets will finally be revealed, but sadly, I doubt it. So speaking of the possibility of strange structures on the moon and possible alien encounters, enter Scott Waring. Scott Waring, an enthusiast in all things extraterrestrial, has posted tons of videos and images of things he's spotted in images and videos, including stuff on the moon. He's posted tons of videos on YouTube where he zooms in on lunar craters, pointing out strange shapes that he insists don't fit the bill as just natural rock formations. He thinks they look like structures or even spacecraft. One of his finds is a curious formation in the Zeeman crater on the far side of the moon. It looks to be a rectangular type of shape, almost too perfect to be anything but artificial, according to him anyway. Waring and other conspiracy theorists have speculated that it could be an entrance to an underground alien base. It kind of see looks like steps there, right? Waring also alleges that some of these structures he's identified mysteriously vanish from future scans of Google Moon, making him think things are being covered up. Either the images are getting scrubbed from Google, or the objects are mobile in some way and are just flying away or like closing up. But are these just cases of the human brain perceiving familiar patterns or shapes where none actually exist? I gotta say, in most of these cases, I think so. I do believe there are aliens out there. I also think there's a high probability they've interacted with us, but I'm not too sure they have bases set up on the moon. But what do you guys think? Let's talk more about mysterious objects and structures on the moon. Anyway though, maybe you'll be convinced. Could astronauts have come across alien structures or artifacts on the moon in previous missions? Remnants of some ancient civilization or evidence of extraterrestrial activity up there? There have been other anomalies captured in photographs from the Apollo missions. Unusual shapes and formations that look to be artificial rather than natural. Again, if stuff like this was found, governments and space agencies might be hesitant about returning to the moon out of fear of what they might find. Uncovering evidence of past or present extraterrestrial civilizations could be dangerous. We may just not want to poke the bear until we're ready to deal with it, which is why we haven't had a plan in motion to return until now. One example of odd structures on the moon is this image here, which was taken on an Apollo mission. Formation is often referred to as the castle. This is probably the image that got most people thinking about possible alien structures on the moon. It does kind of look like three pillars or columns holding up what looks to be a tower. And what's intriguing is that this structure looks brighter than its surroundings. So again, what do you think? Is this just a trick of the light, or could it be something more? Here's a weird one. So anyone a fan here of mystery goo? Feel like that's something you want to mess with? No? Well, apparently there's some on the moon. China's U-2 rover, part of the Chang'e 4 mission, made a strange discovery on the far side of the moon. It was a weird jelly-like substance. This strange material was found inside a small crater called von Karman, and it looked different from the usual dusty lunar soil surrounding it. The rover stumbled on it when it was busy exploring the moon's surface using its visible and near-infrared spectrometer, or VNIS. And we're not entirely sure what this stuff is. Scientists have thrown around a few ideas, of course. Some think it could be glass that melted when a space rock crashed into the moon, but it could also be alien spit. I'll just say alien spit. I want to go further with that, but you know. The U-2 rover started poking around on the moon in 2019, collecting data on the far side where astronauts have never set foot, and that just makes this discovery a lot more interesting. Another possibility about why we haven't gone back to the moon in such a long time is that astronauts could have encountered unforeseen hazards or some other type of phenomena during previous missions. Something that's not necessarily alien, just strange. Space is of course full of dangers, from radiation and microgravity to meteoroid impacts and solar storms. It's possible that Apollo astronauts encountered threats beyond what they were prepared for, and quite possibly beyond what they could even explain. So this one is a bit more esoteric, I know, but I'm just throwing some ideas out there. They may have seen something they just couldn't wrap their heads around. Horrifying, but beyond recognition, almost Lovecraftian. Something that made them never want to return. Of course, other than that though, there are the more well-documented dangers, like the harrowing experiences of Apollo 13, which narrowly avoided disaster after an oxygen tank explosion. There are also the long-term effects of space travel on human health, like radiation exposure and bone loss. If astronauts encountered unknown dangers or phenomena on the moon, space agencies would obviously be a lot more cautious going forward. So maybe they prioritized unmanned missions for that very reason. Here's a more cynical idea though. Maybe the moon holds strategic importance for military purposes. Maybe landing on the moon wasn't as much about humanity reaching the stars as it was about gaining control over a valuable piece of rock. I mean, the space race was happening during the Cold War, after all. The Soviets and the US were desperate to get up there. Could there be covert operations that have been going on the moon? Could the moon be in the process of militarization? Advancements in technology have made space-based weapons and surveillance capabilities very feasible. If governments have indeed set up military installations on the moon or are planning to do so, the implications would be huge, and because of how sensitive military operations are and the potential for geopolitical tension, governments may be reluctant to publicly come forward and disclose their activities up there on the moon, not wanting to reveal any classified information. Probably the most likely explanation for me, though, is this one: money. The allure of returning to the moon is, of course, undeniable, but I mean, it all comes down to what's practical in the end, right? Funding is one of the main challenges for space exploration in general. There have been advances in space technology, but the cost and complexity of lunar exploration are still big obstacles, particularly for cash-strapped space agencies facing competing priorities and budgetary constraints. Developing the necessary spacecraft, habitats, the propulsion systems for long lunar missions requires a lot of investment and innovation. The long-term sustainability of, say, a lunar base is a big obstacle, because I mean, why go back to the moon if all we're gonna do is look around again? The goal is always to take things another step forward, and at this point it would be establishing an actual base up there, and politics come into play. I'll get more into politics in a minute, but political priorities shift and the public's interest in moon missions can also influence government's funding for space exploration. In recent years, there has been a growing awareness as well of the potential impact of human activities on the moon and even Mars. Scientists and policymakers are getting more concerned about the risk of contaminating the lunar environment with all of Earth's little microbes or disrupting delicate ecosystems that may exist up there. There's no doubt that if we keep going the direction we are, that one day we'll colonize the moon and Mars, but we need to develop protocols and regulations to try and minimize the risk of biological contamination. If we don't, there could be big problems. Politics, they get in the way of everything. As more countries get involved in space exploration, working together becomes even more important. But tensions between countries and different national interests can make forming partnerships tough. Issues like who owns the technology, how resources are shared, and how information is exchanged can all cause problems, especially among countries with their own space plans. To make moon missions successful and space exploration in general more successful, countries need to get along, conflicts will need to be avoided, and we have to put aside our petty squabbles and finally come together as one unified force, because I mean, the deeper we get into space, who knows what we're gonna find. But last on the list, we have moon dust, aka lunar regolith, which covers the moon's surface like a fine, powdery blanket. Dust doesn't sound very intimidating, but it can be, at least on the moon. Unlike the dust you find on stuff like that waffle maker, that person who barely knew you got you for a Secret Santa 4 years ago that you only used once, moon dust is a different form of dust. It's not even dust. It's these tiny, sharp grains of sand. It's formed over billions of years from meteoroid impacts, and because the moon lacks any weather erosion, it just stays jagged. So this lunar dust can be a bit of a problem. Anakin Skywalker would hate moon dust. It's coarse and rough and irritating, and it gets everywhere. But it's more than just annoying and inconvenient. Moon dust can mess up spacesuits, spacecraft, and machinery, potentially causing damage or malfunctions, and accidentally inhaling moon dust would be very dangerous. Moon dust can cause all sorts of respiratory issues.
In our number 5 spot, we have aliens on Earth. This is another fun theory, as hey, we all don't know what's happening in Area 51 and all the underground secret bases of the world, so maybe there are aliens on Earth persuading us to not go back to the moon. There have been many reports of the gray people in the underground bases, and then of course the reptile people are a popular point of discussion. So who knows, perhaps us humans aren't just humans anymore living on this planet. Perhaps there are shapeshifters around us telling us to not focus on the moon for whatever reason. Could be because they are from it. In our number 4 spot, we have billionaires might go there anyway. One of the reasons NASA might be holding off on returning to the moon could be because billionaires like Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos might be going there anyways. Why bother wasting money on a trip if we could ask the billionaires funding their own trip to let us, tag along for research reasons? I'm sure NASA could buy a seat fleet on their spaceship. It's probably more affordable than spending the money to build their own ship and pay their own employees. Makes sense to me. In our number 3 spot, we never went in the first place. Well, obviously this is a popular one in the online forum chat rooms, the infamous debate. Did we even go to the moon ever? Or was it filmed in a Hollywood studio? Well, look, I guess it could be possible. They could have a Hollywood-style studio in Area 51 where they filmed it, and then none of the employees would say anything because they've already sworn to secrecy anyway. Or perhaps their memories could have been wiped and they wouldn't remember anyway. This would be quite unsettling if true, but I honestly don't think we'll ever know for sure. I wish I could go to NASA, watch the astronauts get in the spaceship, watch it take off, and then watch it land days or weeks later. Then I would be 100% convinced. If you know someone who has done this, please share your experience in the comment section below and make all the non-believers believe. In our number 2 spot, we have slim pickings. An issue that NASA in particular might be dealing with that is a little unsettling is the lack of young people interested in the idea of being an astronaut or scientist these days. Apparently astronauts say that American kids were polled and they say that they dream more about becoming YouTube stars rather than astronauts, and that's a big problem for NASA. Not to mention that we now live in a society of kids that want the quick fix success route and don't know the value of working hard. Apparently the average person that works at NASA's Johnson Space Center is closer to 60 years old. Yikes. NASA astronaut Rusty Schweickart was quoted as saying, "That's not where innovation and excitement comes from. Excitement comes from when you've got teenagers and 20-year-olds running programs. When Elon Musk lands a rocket booster, his whole company is yelling and screaming and jumping up and down." Honestly, it makes sense. Young people aren't, worn out yet and still see life in so much color, and that is what is required for new creative ideas to flow. In our number 1 spot, we have political reasons. Political reasons? Pfft. Why is it always about politics? Well, apparently this is the number 1 reason that NASA has not returned to the moon. Apparently this reasoning has been spoken out quite often over the last while. In 2019, NASA's administrator, Jim Bridenstine, reportedly said that, quote, "If it wasn't for the political risk, we would be on the moon right now. In fact, we would probably be on Mars." There is much speculation as to what the heck that means, but perhaps another country with more power than the US might have a hold on them? Or, by political risk, do they mean that it would be such a large spend of people's tax dollars that it may be hard for one party to be re-elected? In any case, that statement is so vague, and the people should really be harder on NASA to just, tell the truth. It's one thing if we're not going there because it's not necessary. It's another if we're not going there to be strategic for election time.
The 1952 Washington, D.C. UFO incident, often referred to as the Washington Flap, is one of the craziest UFO reports in history. Over 2 weekends in July of that year, people in the Capitol began reporting a series of strange sightings in the sky. On the night of July 19th, radar operators at Washington National Airport picked up a cluster of unknown objects flying at incredible speeds. Ground witnesses described seeing bright lights darting around erratically. The following night, the sightings continued, and the US Air Force sent up fighter jets to chase the mysterious objects. Pilots in the jets reported seeing glowing lights that seemed to defy the laws of physics, making sudden accelerations and sharp turns that no conventional aircraft could replicate. Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Richard French was an investigator for Project Blue Book in the 50s. In 2013, during a citizen hearing on disclosure, he told a pretty wild story. While working for Project Blue Book, his job had often just involved debunking UFO sightings, but there was one incident that he had no explanation for. French recounted an incident had happened while he was investigating off the coast of St. John's, Newfoundland. Reports had come in about 2 mysterious aircraft that supposedly crashed in the water. French followed a group of around 100 onlookers gathered on a nearby wharf. What he saw next was something he'd never be able to forget. He described encountering 2 to 3 foot tall beings that were thin and gray, seemingly working on their damaged crafts in the water. French and the onlookers watched as these strange beings repaired their vessels right before his eyes. Then the craft lifted out of the water and shot off into the sky. He never included this sighting in his official reports at the time, probably fearing he'd be laughed out of his job. The Indian Ocean has a long history of mysterious sightings, with reports of strange underwater objects dating back as far as 1873. A number of sailors have described encounters with these massive, mile-wide discs lurking beneath the surface of the water, sometimes accompanied by eerie lights. One of the earliest documented sightings occurred on March 23, 1873, when the ship Adelheid was navigating the South China Sea. Crew members claimed to see this huge glowing circular object floating just below the water. And then, May 15, 1879, the crew of the HMS Vulture spotted two enormous Ferris wheel type objects spinning in opposite directions. Each spoke about 25 feet wide and spaced about 100 feet apart. On April 14, 1901, sailors aboard the SS Kilwa reported beams of light shining from an underwater disc-like object in the Persian Gulf. Then in 1943, a sailor named Matthew Mangle noticed a massive glowing disc keeping pace with his ship. Next on the list we have the Rendlesham Forest incident. This one is very well documented. It took place in December of 1980 near the Rendlesham Forest in Suffolk, England. Late at night on December 26th of 1980, military personnel witnessed strange lights descending into the forest. At first they figured it was just a downed aircraft, a known one. What they found definitely seemed to be an aircraft, just not one they'd ever seen before. They came across what seemed to be a metallic object on the forest floor and would see strange lights in the sky. Some reported that the object they saw was triangular and emitted strange beams of light. One of the airmen even claimed to have touched the object. There are official documents that have been released about this story with full reports by the military personnel at the site, and what they described was pretty strange. Now, did they actually encounter an alien spacecraft? It's debatable, but what is clear is that they saw something out of the ordinary. And finally, we have one of the most mysterious and destructive crash landings of all time, the Tunguska event. On June 30th, 1908, a massive blast hit this remote area of Russia. The event is believed to have been caused by the airburst of a large object of some kind, most likely a comet or asteroid, entering Earth's atmosphere and exploding in mid-air. The explosion released an enormous amount of energy and flattened about 80 million trees in the area. Now, luckily this happened in a very remote area, so only trees were affected, but that also means there were very few witnesses. A handful of people did report seeing a bright bluish light in the sky though, accompanied by a series of thunderous noises. And there's always been this question as to whether this was caused by a space rock or something else. Apparently there was also mutated plant life after this impact, and Joseph Stalin is rumored to have even conducted secret experiments in the area, but that's more of an urban legend.
Number 5. Pentagon Report. In May of this year, the Pentagon appeared on a panel where they discussed UFOs, and they revealed just how much information they have about the situation. They said that there are around 400 separate reports of unidentified flying objects coming from military personnel. So while we do have the 3 leaked videos, there are likely even more locked up in a safe somewhere that offer convincing evidence of the existence of aliens. The Deputy Director of Naval Intelligence said, "We've seen an increasing number of unauthorized and/or unidentified aircraft or objects, and military control training areas and training ranges and other designated airspace. Reports of sightings are frequent and continuous." Well, it definitely sounds like he's trying to sweep it under the rug as someone just like flying a drone illegally onto a military base or something. I think it's safe to say the military have the resources to know if it were something as simple as that. So their confusion and uncertainty makes it seem more and more like aliens are among us. Number 4. Live stream. In 2016, an incident occurred during NASA's live feed from a camera mounted on the International Space Station that pointed towards the Earth. You can see the Earth's curve, and one viewer noticed that for a short moment, a massive bright object can be seen falling towards the planet. But as quickly as it comes, it's gone, on as the live feed conveniently cuts out and experiences technical difficulties. The video was posted to YouTube and people immediately started theorizing that NASA had intentionally cut the live feed at this moment to cover up the fact that this bright shape was a UFO, or at least something alien in origin. Many people noted how suspicious this was and started calling out NASA for their actions, while other people were saying that it was just a meteor or some hunk of space junk. A spokesperson for NASA said that the cameras are controlled automatically, and it had simply passed out of range, causing the video to be cut off. But that's just what they want you to think. Number 3. Alien junk. An astrophysicist from Harvard wrote a book that was titled Extraterrestrial: The First Sign of Intelligent Life Beyond Earth, and it was about how he believed that an object that passed through the solar system in 2017 was actually a piece of alien technology, bringing forward the theory that NASA is actually just ignoring real evidence of alien existence because they're just brushing it off as some random space junk. Whether they believe it really is space junk or they're just trying to make us think that that's what it is. The object was long and not shaped like any known comet we've ever seen before. It also apparently accelerated away from the sun, and he believes it ended up in our solar system accidentally thanks to aliens, saying, "A buoy, a grid of pods for communication, other intelligent living organisms, defunct technology, or discarded technological trash. These are all plausible explanations." Number 2. Buzz Aldrin. Buzz Aldrin was one of a handful of astronauts who were aboard the Apollo 11, the first spaceflight that put humans on the moon with one small step for man. During their journey, however, they saw more than just the moon. Apparently, they may have seen a UFO. They reported seeing large objects that appeared to follow alongside them. It was confirmed not to be the upper stage of the rocket that would have been detached, as this was 6,000 miles away from them at the time. The event was kept under wraps and nobody talked about it until it was brought up years later, sweeping it under the rug as simply a panel that had disconnected from the ship. But again, that's just what they want you to think. The claims coming from a senior NASA scientist who said he had just called up Buzz on the phone and he had agreed. Did you really talk to him on the phone, senior NASA scientist? Did you really? Number 1. ISS report. Alright, this one's not actually NASA because it actually comes from a Russian astronaut aboard the International Space Station, and I'm just gonna count it because it's a pretty cool video. He was on board the ISS using his camera to record the southern lights, which are the same as the northern lights but in the south. It's a time-lapse recording, and for a brief moment you can see a line of large bright lights moving across the sky. In the tweet the astronaut posted, he referred to them as space guests, saying that while it was only a few seconds in the time-lapse, it was actually around 52 seconds in real time. Some people suggest that it may have been some kind of meteor or satellite, but I'm actually a licensed professional and I say that it was aliens. Number 5. Evidence scale. This one is not so much leaked, but was instead part of an announcement that NASA was going to become more serious about trying to discover life on other planets. They announced that they are going to have a scale to measure extraterrestrial evidence so that it's not as black and white as life or no life. Proposed by NASA Chief Scientist Jim Green, the scale includes 7 different levels, which ranks evidence of life based on their environment and the opinions of the scientific community at large. The highest levels on the scale are of course level 6, verifying signs of life with several different instruments, and level 7, and on different locations on the world. They said in a statement, "We need a better way to share the excitement of our discoveries and demonstrate how each discovery builds on the next, so that we can bring the public and other scientists along on the journey. This new eagerness to bring people along on the journey of discovery could be a sign that they're warming us up to revealing aliens." Number 4. Meteorite. In 2011, a NASA scientist came out claiming that they had found legitimate evidence of alien life, this being from fossils inside a meteorite that landed on Earth. Richard Hoover said that he found evidence of what is basically microscopic little alien bugs, or as the science people call it, filaments and other structures pictures that appear to be fossils of algae known as cyanobacteria, little alien bugs. Laboratory tests done found no evidence that they were the remains of Earth-based organisms, despite being slightly similar to organisms that have been found in the waterways of Spain. Hoover says that the lack of nitrogen, which is essential for life on Earth, proves that they are the remains of extraterrestrial life forms that grew on the parent bodies of the meteorites when liquid water was present, long before the meteorites entered the Earth's atmosphere. This isn't the first time that this sort of evidence has been found on meteorites, and it probably won't be the last. Number 3. Anonymous. We know that the infamous Gary McKinnon managed to hack into the NASA databases and find secret UFO pictures, but did you know that the group known as Anonymous did it as well? In 2017, they made a 12.5-minute long YouTube video where they claimed to have gained access to secret NASA information, telling people that NASA was covering up the discovery of alien life. They said that the organization had recently found 219 new planet candidates, 10 having very similar conditions to Earth. Because of this, the group came to believe that NASA was either incredibly close to finding alien life or had already found it. They also stated that this was a sign NASA was getting closer and closer to revealing the truth about aliens. And while many people brushed it off as being ridiculous, we now know that NASA has just revealed their new UFO study, so Anonymous may have been closer to the truth than we thought. Number 2. Black Knight Satellite. Alright, now let's get into some stuff that is a little more conspiratorial than usual, if that's even possible, and various different ways that people believe NASA is trying to cover stuff up, but apparently not doing a good enough job. There is a conspiracy that there is a satellite called the Black Knight Satellite, which was set up by aliens more than 12,000 years ago in order to spy on humans. Photos from the first shuttle trip to the International Space Station in 1998 appeared to show a large black object hovering over Earth, and people believed it was the first photographic evidence of the Black Knight satellite. All previous evidence from years before were just things like radio signals. They also believed that back in the early 1900s, Nikola Tesla actually picked up signals from the Black Knight. Whether or not you actually believe in the existence of the satellite spying on us apparently doesn't matter anymore, as it was reportedly shot down by the Illuminati in 2017. Number 1. Hollow Earth. Alright, this one's not so much about aliens, but trust me on this, I am a self-proclaimed extraterrestrial expert, okay? In 2016, one YouTube user suggested that NASA was trying to cover up the existence of something at the North and South poles. Old satellite images of Earth from space appear to apparently show some sort of a massive hole at each end of the Earth, what they claim to be an entrance. If you're not sold on the flat Earth theory, then let me introduce you to Hollow Earth. As its name suggests, the truth is apparently that the inside of the Earth is hollow and actually contains inner Earth complete with its own sun. Explorers have apparently seen the inner Earth firsthand when flying over the North Pole. So this is just a cool, crazy conspiracy, and it doesn't actually really relate to aliens, but I just wanted to talk about it. So as an alien expert, I'm just gonna say that the inner Earth is actually where all the aliens live, and they control us from the inside. Number 5. Mercury UFO. Project Mercury was NASA's first ambitious space mission, which took place back in the early 1960s, which included 6 manned space flights. But that isn't what we're going to be focusing on. One of the Mercury probes sent out into space took a picture of what appears to clearly be a UFO. A photo that a NASA blogger found in an old disk from the mission that took place in December 1960 appears to show a strange shape that looks like it could be an alien spacecraft. While many arguments against UFOs are that they're just random space junk, this was at the beginning of NASA's steps out into space, so there really couldn't have been that many rocket pieces and broken panels floating around. The blogger says that he believes this is aliens wanting to watch one of humanity's biggest steps, not worrying about being seen because this particular craft didn't actually have any humans on it. Number 4. Deleted UFO. This same blogger also recently found evidence of NASA purposefully covering up and deleting archival photos that appear to show evidence of aliens. He found a photo of what appears to be a large, dark, rectangular alien ship flying past the sun, and he also found that NASA is trying to hide it. On his blog, he said, "I found a huge rectangle UFO shooting past our sun, and it's got to be several miles across or more. I tried to find it on another NASA site, but I got an error message. Then I tried using official European Space Administration software, and again, error message. Then I went into the individual photos online and input my own URL, but these photo times do not exist. That's 3 different sources all erased from existence. I found it at a 4th source." He says that he won't reveal this other source as he doesn't want it taken down as well. There are 20 different photos in a row that all show the unidentified craft, and he calls NASA out for never saying anything about it. Number 3. Mars photos. I talked about this on a separate list, but I also wanted to touch on it here too. We've taken a look at one Mars rover photo already, but I want to dive into just how many of these there are. People are constantly picking out unexplained and potentially alien things popping up in these photos of the red planet. One of the most baffling recent images is this one that appears to show some sort of carved out entryway which people believe must lead to some sort of alien hideout on the planet, looking too precise to have been caused by natural weather and environment conditions like NASA claims. There have also been many rocks that appear to be much more than just rocks, as they stand out from anything else in the photos, almost looking like a sort of coral growing out from the ground through the dust. There are a lot of them, and NASA has attempted to explain away all these photos, but there is still just a lot of mystery there. Number 2. The Calvine photo. This one is similar to the Kecksburg file in the way that it is also a UFO encounter from many decades ago that NASA tried to hide away by claiming it was lost. The photo was taken in August 1990 by 2 hikers near Calvine in Scotland. It shows what is clearly a large diamond-shaped vessel flying through the sky, being trailed by another airplane. They took pictures and said it appeared to be about 30 meters long. It apparently then shot straight up into the sky and disappeared, never to be seen again. The photo was first given to the newspaper and then handed over to the Ministry of Defense, and then it was never discussed again, and the photo apparently went missing. In October of 2021, the Scottish Operations Records book was checked, and there was no account of anything having been spotted in the sky on that day. One determined individual, however, managed to track down the lost photo, and about it they said, "The Calvine photograph stands as one of the biggest mysteries in UFO history. Finally revealed after 32 years, it shows that answers only bring new questions." Number 1. Space nudes. In May of this year, it was revealed to the public that NASA was going to be sending a message out to aliens, calling it the Beacon in the Galaxy. It's a binary coded message that includes details about our planet and human life that is going to be shot into space for anybody to find. One of these images was revealed to be an image of what a genetically male and female human look like, and yes, it has all the details. It also includes a diagram of gravity so aliens know which part of us is the top and which is the bottom. Other images included are the solar system diagram, a map of Earth's landmass, and depictions of things like mountains and trees. So yes, NASA is actually sending our nudes out to space. The fact that they are doing this shows that at least a small part of the organization believes that aliens are out there to receive this message. Thank you guys for watching. That was 10 more leaked NASA documents that prove aliens exist. If you enjoyed this video, then feel free to like and subscribe, and maybe check out some more of our stuff. Also, I regret to announce this has been my final video with Most Amazing. So all I have to say is, I've been Woody, you guys keep being amazing, and thank you for having joined me for all of my lists and scary things.
Want to see more videos like this one? Check out this video next. It's about sightings of the thought-to-be-extinct creature, the Titanoboa. Now, this creature was thought to be extinct for the last couple of million years, but there has been some concerning footage that might show that it's still alive and well. Click the video now to find out more. See you in the next video.